What if Yoda defeated Darth Sidious in Revenge of the Sith? That's what I want to talk about today. I had fun kind of exploring a different concept than usual in this, so I hope you enjoy. Also, link in the description for my second channel where I'll be streaming later today about Ahsoka Episode 6. Anyways, let's get right into this video. On Coruscant, a lightsaber duel for the fate of the galaxy was taking place in the Senate chambers. Yoda, wielding his green lightsaber, was flipping around the room, fighting against Darth Sidious, the Dark Lord of the Sith. The fight had been going on for a while, and Yoda was beginning to tire. Eventually, Sidious jumped up to a higher area of the Senate pods, and began to throw them down at Yoda. Yoda jumped from pod to pod, avoiding the force attacks from Sidious, and eventually, Yoda had just enough time to catch one of the pods, spinning it in the air, and firing it back at Sidious. Yoda watched as Sidious jumped off the pod, and Yoda knew that he was distracted. The Grand Master threw his lightsaber, guiding it with the Force, and it cut across the shoulder of Sidious, causing him to miss the pod and fall all the way to the ground. Sidious managed to reduce his fall speed with the Force, but still was slammed into the ground. He looked around frantically for Yoda, but could not find him. Then Sidious realized that his lightsaber was lost, and Sidious could feel Yoda in the air behind him, lightsaber ignited for the kill. So the Sith Lord turned and quickly grabbed Yoda by the throat while he was in the air. Yoda felt everything begin to go dark. He was going to lose. But out of the corner of his eye, he saw Sidious's lightsaber on the ground. Yoda guided it through the air with the Force, using any remaining strength, and guided it right through Sidious's back. For Sidious, this was his entire life's work collapsing in one moment. He could not die like this. He wouldn't. He had to take a risk, a power that his master had learned, and one Sidious had learned enough about to try, here and now, essence transfer. But if one fails to transfer their essence, their consciousness remains in a chaotic void of nothingness for the rest of eternity. Still, he had to try, and Sidious sent his consciousness out of his body, leaving the body completely dead, and he searched into the galaxy for a being that was strong enough to contain his power, vulnerable enough to accept him. On Mustafar, Obi-Wan Kenobi left the planet heartbroken. He just had to leave his former student, his brother, to die. And down below on the lava flats, Anakin Skywalker scraped and clawed at the loose, hot gravel. He couldn't die like this. And right as Anakin was about to give in to the death, a familiar voice came to him. Anakin opened his eyes. Qui-Gon? No, not his old Jedi Master, but his new Sith Master. The distant voice of Sidious in his head grew louder, until Anakin could understand everything. Sidious sounded calm as usual, and he told Anakin that the Jedi have defeated them, but they will not die. Sidious told Anakin that perhaps this was destiny. They could emerge stronger if they just worked together. Anakin did not quite understand, but Sidious said that Anakin must let go, allow himself to be open to the dark side of the Force, and Sidious can heal him, keep him alive, make him stronger, give him all the power that he has ever dreamed of. In this moment, Anakin was out of options. He could do this, or he could die. And so Anakin, completely vulnerable and desperate, but powerful enough to contain the consciousness of Sidious, opened his mind to it. And in this moment, Sidious entered and completely took over the body of Anakin. Sidious took over and felt the pain, anger, rage, darkness inside of him. And Sidious found Anakin's broken mind and casted it deep into the back of Anakin. Sidious was completely taking over, and was keeping Anakin as a prisoner in his own mind and body. Anakin's consciousness was hidden, and Anakin knew now that he made a giant mistake. Sidious did what he could to influence the midichlorians in this body to regain any strength. And once he did everything he possibly could, Sidious used his one good arm to crawl up the lava flats, then across the platform all the way back to Anakin Starfighter. It was rather pathetic to see, and R2 couldn't believe what he was seeing. But Sidious in Anakin's body told R2 to take them to Coruscant. Sidious had a special medical facility that was ready for anything. R2 obliged more so out of fear than anything else, jumping into hyperspace with the ruined body of Anakin in the seat. In hyperspace, Sidious let him fall unconscious, and in this unconscious state, he found Anakin Skywalker in the mind with him. Once again, Sidious pushed Anakin as far down as possible, keeping him hidden, like he was dead in his own body. Sidious was in full control, keeping this body alive with the sheer power of the dark side. And eventually, R2 landed at the medical facility on Coruscant, where Sidious had practiced many dark experiments and many different suits as contingency plans. Today, they would be tested. He had suits poorly designed for any apprentices that he could punish, but he also had a suit in perfect condition, a suit that could move and fight better than that of even General Grievous. And Sidious had his medical droids place this body inside of a new cybernetic suit. This would take a long while. His force abilities were more limited because of the loss of organic limbs, but he was alive, and still extremely powerful. For Grandmaster Yoda, he was concerned the moment Sidious died. Yoda felt his presence in the Force disappear before he actually died, so Yoda was concerned that this was not the end for the Dark Lord. He knew of dark-side immortality powers from the studies of Darth Bane, Darth Zana, among other Sith in the past. But Yoda had to sprint away from this area, as clones stormed into the room, eventually finding Bail Organa, and the two of them went to Polis Massa together. Yoda had won, but he still felt uneasy, like something was coming. And on Polis Massa, Padme would give birth and die from her injuries on Mustafar, along with the sadness of losing Anakin. But she had twins, and after some contemplation, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Bail decided the twins should be raised together on Alderaan. With Palpatine gone, with Vader gone, they would be safe together, and Bail said he and his wife would raise the children, while Uncle Ben Kenobi would come to visit when it was safe. Yoda decided to go with everyone as well. He couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was still hiding away, waiting to emerge, and he wanted to be there to protect the children, and so they all took off for Alderaan. They all wondered how the death of Emperor Palpatine would be handled, but they expected a HoloNet report to come to them soon enough. It would likely be Mas Amedda or someone in that group of Palpatine loyalists trying to gain power. But Bail had many allies that would help him restore a republic, he thought to himself. But on Coruscant, Darth Sidious rose from the medical table. He was covered head to toe in a black suit, but it was so well designed that he felt extremely powerful. The cybernetic limbs were extremely strong physically, which made up for the reduced force abilities. He walked to the open doorway, getting used to this new suit, his new body, and he looked to the Senate building. Once more, the Sith will rule the galaxy. Obi-Wan and Yoda were hidden away in Bail's apartment as the children were officially introduced to their new parents. It was a nice moment after days of nothing but pain and despair, but the moment would not last. Bail got a communication from one of his Senate friends to listen to the HoloNet broadcast immediately, and so Bail turned it on to reveal something horrific. In the Senate chambers, many of the senators were already gathered. There were rumors flying around about Palpatine being dead. No one knew what to believe, so they were here waiting for the news that would reshape the galaxy. And as the senators were waiting, a robotic voice filled the air as a pod rose up from the ground. The voice was unrecognizable, but it came from a man in a dark, menacing suit, and he spoke loudly, stating that once again, the Jedi Order has made an attempt on his life to kill him. Now everyone understood. Inside of this suit was Emperor Palpatine, face covered, everything covered, and Palpatine continued on, saying he should be dead, but his resilience and his urge to lead this empire to success for the people has never been stronger. Palpatine then said the Jedi will never defeat him, but he is far too injured to show his face without the mask. A group of senators began yelling down, saying they did not believe this was Palpatine. They needed proof, and this greatly angered the Sith Lord, and so Sidious said only the Emperor has full command of the clone troopers. He will prove it is truly him. Sidious gave an order to the troopers to teach these senators a lesson, and without hesitation, these 10 senators shouting down were shot and killed in their pods. The Senate went silent, and Sidious said that this empire does not have time for petty arguments. It will be built up to be stronger than any other system. And Sidious said they will have true peace. After hesitation, the Senate erupted into cheers. The cheers were both out of fear and relief to have Palpatine back. On Alderaan, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Bail were dumbfounded. Yoda watched Palpatine die, but he knew that this was still him. Yoda had felt it happen, and slowly he had a realization, turning to Obi-Wan. Yoda asked if Anakin was truly dead when Obi-Wan left him, and Obi-Wan said he was not. Looking to the ground, Yoda revealed that his worst fears could be true. That could be Anakin's body, taken over by the mind of Sidious. Obi-Wan asked how this was possible, and Yoda told him that the dark side holds many unnatural abilities. And in the Senate, digital faces of Yoda and Obi-Wan were floating in the air. The Emperor announced that these were the greatest threats to his empire. If they are seen, report it to authorities immediately. Obi-Wan asked if it was still possible to save Anakin, to free him of Sidious's grasp, or even possible to defeat Sidious. And Yoda said that neither were possible right now. He would be heavily guarded, ready for an attack. They must wait. They have failed, but in time the Jedi can rise up. And the two Jedi went into the mountains of Alderaan, where they would keep a distant watch on the children. It was a necessary exile, until a time when the Emperor was vulnerable. And for the next 10 years, Darth Sidious would rule as Emperor Palpatine, but his rule would be one of fear and power, draining the Senate of most of its power much quicker than anyone expected. The galaxy and its people were to be loyal to him, and him alone. Sidious put many military leaders in place to enforce his powerful and dangerous rule, while he spent a lot of the time working on clones for himself. In the 10 years, Sidious was trying to create a perfect clone to put his consciousness into. Anakin's body would only last so long, but they were all failures, and while focused on his clones and pressing down extremely hard on the galaxy, one rebellion managed to squeeze out and begin to succeed. On Alderaan, Bail Organa had spent 10 years meticulously planning and practicing every single move into a growing rebellion. He did not rush a single move. He couldn't, or he would be caught. And Bail had heard of rebel cells that were caught. They were not taken prisoner. They were killed painfully by red-bladed assassins known as Inquisitors. So Bail took everything with extreme caution, and in the mountains, Luke and Leia were introduced to the Force 5 years ago. Now they had 5 years of full training, and would hopefully be leaders of this rebellion someday. Obi-Wan and Yoda, training Luke and Leia. But after 10 years of success without a mistake, Bail was due for one, and he had a soft spot for former Jedi. So when former Jedi Bode Akuna came to Bail, asking about a rebellion, and proving his loyalty for over a month, Bail slowly revealed what he was working on. And while talking to Bode about his operations, Bail accidentally slipped up and said there were 2 other Jedi here on this planet. At the time, Bail didn't think anything of it, but in this moment, Imperial spy Bode Akuna knew that he had succeeded. And after another week or so of pretending to be extremely loyal, Bode managed to sneak off and call the Emperor, alerting him of this discovery. There were 2 Jedi here, but Bode did not know which Jedi. Bode himself was a former Jedi, so he did feel bad for betraying other Jedi like this, but the Empire had his daughter, and life as a spy was the only way to keep her safe. Emperor Palpatine thanked Bode in his robotic, scary voice and ended the call. Palpatine sat back in his office chair. For a decade, the galaxy had been looking for Yoda and Obi-Wan, and Palpatine knew now that this report from Alderaan was about them. He would go and kill them himself. Palpatine ordered his ship to be prepared, along with a Star Destroyer to bombard the planet if the Jedi do not reveal themselves. Yoda and Obi-Wan were conducting their secret training of Luke and Leia when the light of the planet went dark for a moment. Above their heads emerged an Imperial Star Destroyer from hyperspace. Yoda and Obi-Wan immediately knew that this was no routine drop-by. The Empire was here for a reason, and soon a single shuttle emerged and flew down to the city. In the city, Bail was with his wife Breya. They were concerned for the safety of Luke and Leia. Bail wondered if he'd messed up somehow. And soon, the door was kicked open, and a squadron of stormtroopers filled the room. Bail and Breya had nowhere to go, as the door opened to reveal the tall, heavily armored Emperor Palpatine. He asked one simple question: where are the Jedi? Back in the mountains, Obi-Wan and Yoda had a plan. It was risky, but it was one Yoda thought had a chance to work. And eventually, Yoda took off to the city, while Obi-Wan and the children waited for their opportunity. Darth Sidious was here, and that meant Anakin Skywalker was here, deep inside of his own mind. Perhaps there was still a chance that Anakin could defeat Sidious, if given a new sense of hope. And as Emperor Palpatine began to threaten Bail and Breya, the door opened again, and Yoda walked in. Finally, thought Sidious. He looked back to Bail and Breya and began to choke them, but was thrown out of the window by a strong force push from Yoda. Bail and Breya watched Yoda jump out of the window after him. Sidious didn't expect Yoda to attack with such ferocity inside the house, but here they were. Sidious grabbed his red lightsaber and prepared for a new duel, one where he would get his revenge. And Darth Sidious, using the advanced capabilities of his cybernetic suit, launches a devastating series of force attacks from his fingers, uprooting trees, lifting rocks with dark-side energy, breaking buildings, throwing debris at him. Yoda, however, would call upon the Force to create a protective bubble around himself, deflecting the debris with ease. With a sudden burst of speed, Yoda closed the distance between them, launching a flurry of quick and precise attacks, aiming to breach Sidious's formidable armor. Sidious countered with brutal strength, his armored limbs working together, blocking all of Yoda's blows. Each clash of lightsabers sent sparks flying, lighting up Alderaan. And after a moment, Sidious could feel a new presence, and a blue lightsaber cut across his armored back, and he stumbled forward. It was Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan tried to call out to Anakin Skywalker, stuck deep inside, kept prisoner in his own mind by Darth Sidious. Obi-Wan told him to break out of this, that he could still come back, to take control. But before he could continue, he was thrown backwards by Sidious. For the first time in a while, Sidious could feel Anakin trying to break free, and it was distracting. Sidious barely blocked a new flurry of strikes from Yoda, punching the little green Jedi into the ground. And Obi-Wan continued to pry. Sidious used his full power now on Obi-Wan. He slammed his lightsaber down on Kenobi, his rage fueling him. And eventually, he disarmed Obi-Wan and used the Force to slam Yoda into the wall of an Alderaan building. He was stuck. And Sidious lifted his saber as Obi-Wan continued to call to Anakin. And then, a pair of new voices emerged. Two children came from the corner and said something that would change the entire fight. Luke and Leia, 10 years old, looked to the armored man and simply said, "Father, please." Deep inside the mind where Sidious had control, the consciousness felt hope for the first time in a decade. Anakin had thought Padme and the children were dead, and it was all his fault. He didn't have the willpower to break free of Sidious's chains. But seeing the young children here, and immediately knowing they were the children of he and Padme, gave Anakin the strength that he needed. Inside of his mind, there was now a battle of wills. Anakin pushed hard against Sidious, rejecting the Sith Lord, trying to return back into his own mind. Anakin thought all about these children, how he must do this to keep them safe. And with a final effort, using all of his strength, Anakin completely pushed Sidious from his mind. And in this final moment, Anakin used his immense returned power to not only remove Sidious, but to weaken his consciousness so much that he was forever stuck in the void of chaos, surrounded by nothingness with nowhere to go for all of eternity. And back on Alderaan, Anakin returned. He spent the decade hidden away in his own mind to reflect on everything. He knew that he was wrong. He knew Sidious was wrong. And finally, Anakin had destroyed the Sith. Anakin removed the helmet now to see his children with his own eyes, to look from Obi-Wan to Yoda, and told them that he would always be with them. With that, Anakin let go. Without Sidious, and without the dark side to fuel him, he could not live in this body. Anakin died. The Emperor was gone forever. And with Palpatine gone, the galaxy could begin to recover and rebuild. Bail Organa would lead from it to an empire to back to a republic in a peaceful transition. There wasn't much hesitation from the rest of the galaxy, as Bail and many other senators returned the empire back to the republic. Palpatine's rule had been extra terrible for so many planets, and they were happy to have the republic. And weeks after the death of Anakin and Palpatine, Obi-Wan was going to sleep on an actual bed inside of an Alderaan home, instead of the mountains. In time, he and Yoda would begin to rebuild the Jedi Order, but not yet. And on this night, Obi-Wan was falling asleep when he heard two familiar voices. He sat up quickly, and in the corner of his room stood his former master and former apprentice, Qui-Gon and Anakin, blue, transparent ghosts. They smiled at Obi-Wan and said they would help guide the Jedi into their new era. And folks, that's where our story ends today. I hope you enjoyed. Once again, please go check out the second channel where we'll be streaming thoughts about Ahsoka. Go check that out. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in the next video.